I lost everything. And when you lose everything, God shows you what's real. Those words came from a good friend of mine. A man who walked away from the life he thought he was building, but not because he wanted to. He separated because, well, it all collapsed underneath him. The career that he'd worked so hard on, gone. A lot of the people that he trusted and relied on seemed to disappear. Certainty essentially devolved into chaos. He blinked his eyes and went from successful and on top of the world to homeless and on the streets of New York. Everything he'd built, gone. Everything he thought he knew, shattered. And although that seems like the end of a story, what it was the beginning of one. Because it brought about transformation, not only of his circumstance, but seemingly of his soul, right? This is not about someone just enduring or surviving, but it's like he awoke. Eventually seeing through the noise, false perception, through the performative layers that so many of us call life. And a few days ago in Austin, I asked him, hey, how do you walk so freely? How are you so unapologetically yourself, right? You say what you mean to an extent I've never seen. You don't tiptoe. You don't chase approval. How? And this is sitting across the table at breakfast. He's holding his coffee. Says, look, I've already had life take everything away. What's life gonna do? Take it away again? When you've been stripped down to nothing, you realize that most of what you feared losing was never real to begin with. And that really hit me. I don't know that old version of my friend, but I know the version sitting across from me at breakfast now, and I can only imagine what that process, what that pressure cooker felt like. But here's where it gets important for you, because his story is extreme. I'm guessing most people will never face the depth of loss he did. And let's be honest, we shouldn't have to lose everything to find clarity. We shouldn't need devastation to become free. What if we could learn the lesson from his journey without the extent of the tragedy? What if we could simulate that fire without having to burn everything down to ashes? See, that's the difference between waiting and creating. Tragedy forced my friend to wake up. But maybe you don't have to wait for life to burn it down. You can choose discomfort. You can manufacture suffering. You can create situations that challenge your comfort zone, that earn your confidence, that build the clarity he found without the collapse. It's like forging steel, right? You don't wait for the sword to break in battle. No, you temper it beforehand. You introduce it to heat and resilience, pressure, so that when the time comes, you are ready. If you want to grow, jump into the cold water. Say what you mean. Yes, even when it's awkward. Get up earlier than you think you can. Stand your ground when you'd rather nod, smile, and conform. Walk into the gym, the meeting, the room when every part of you wants to shrink or hide. Because the little manufactured battles, they become stepping stones. Each one proving to you that you are more than the voice of fear. Each one turning you into someone new. Talked about a moment recently about a kid standing on a rock ledge high above a lake. Summer day, his friends below already laughing and in the water, but he's shaking, toes curled over the edge, mind racing, his brain like any brain, I'm sure, scanning for disaster. What if I fall wrong? What if I hit something? What if it goes poorly? But standing still is its own prison. And in this situation, perhaps the only prison, right? And so eventually he jumps, and when he comes up for air, breathless, eyes wide, he isn't just relieved, he is alive. He opened himself up to let the light in, becoming something new on the way down. He met a version of himself that hesitation could never reach. And that's the path for all of us. You can wait for the storm, or you can learn to dance in the rain. You can wait for the loss, or you can strip away those things that do not serve you. You can float through life hoping for peace, or you can go to war with your fears and create it. Which brings to mind an old tale from ancient China, where a great philosopher would tell this story about a wealthy man who captures this bird and locks him in a golden cage, but feeds him the rarest, most extravagant seed, the best food, offered it everything it could want, everything except freedom. Day after day, the bird sat still, wings tucked in. People marveled at its beauty, but it never sang. Then one day, the cage was left open, and though that bird was weak from confinement, it flew away and never came back. And when asked why the bird would leave a life of luxury, the old man said simply, "Because to be free and hungry is greater than to be full and imprisoned." Only in the sky could the bird remember who it truly was, and that's what we're talking about, right? You're not here to be admired in a metaphorical cage, to be playing a role in someone else's story. You're not here to be acting out a part prescribed for you. You're here to fly, to live truthfully, to sing your song, even if it shakes the room. Freedom, it doesn't mean chaos necessarily. It means choosing what you give your energy to. It means protecting your time and honoring your energy and chasing what makes you feel alive and unapologetically cutting those things that don't. Because here's the truth. When you lose everything, life cannot take from you what you're willing to rebuild. And when you choose to give things up, the people-pleasing, the lies, the masks, you gain something worth far more. Yourself. We're not here to tiptoe through life. We're here to run through it like we were born to, scraped knees, heart open, unshaken, to jump, to break, to rise again. Not as the same person, but as someone who knows what's real. We know what's possible. We know what's out there. The question is not, does it exist? The question is, will you choose it? When I was in Austin a few days ago, a friend of mine who lived a miraculous life, like one that every single person here would just be like, what? And then very much saw it come completely undone. Lost not only the lifestyle and the status and what he did and his purpose, but his loved ones left. He was poor, abandoned, ended up homeless in New York. Like just going through the, and it is a testament to the Phoenix story where he's risen from the ashes and really recreated himself. And he's just a tough guy, loving, but he'll say what's on his mind. And he said this quote, he said, "I lost everything, and when you lose everything, God shows you what's real." So I'm basically just exploring that and talking about how when you're broken down to the worst of the worst, and you rise from that, you realize, well, what's life gonna do? I mean, it could put me in that hell again, but I've already overcome it. And I think it frees you up to just think about what's important and live in a way that's strictly conducive to what matters and what's meaningful to you. He'll tell people to F off if they don't add value, surrounds himself only with people who he cares about, and things that seem basic and intuitive, right? And then you do an audit and you're like, oh, I can definitely be better and have more clarity in a lot of these areas. And then the second half of the speech is saying, how do we, in a sense, take what he learned and inject it into our lives so that we don't have to be homeless in New York for 10 years, right? It's like you can learn from people and understand and take away the value from his acquired courage and inject it into your life. There was a speech last week about the courage to jump from a cliff, and it's fine. And everyone's done it, and you see the people before you in line step up and do it and jump, and the water's deep and it's fine. But you get up and you're on that edge looking down. Your body's still, there's hesitation. It's just biological, just this restraint. And I think, so many things that's there. So that's the question. If being broken and having nothing helped him realize what is there to lose, how can we learn from that so that we can stop doing things out of obligation and instead live lives true to ourselves? So I'm writing that out now, and then what I'm going to do is speak it into the camera. What's up, gang? Welcome to the show. I hope you enjoyed that first segment and a little behind the scenes action too on a beautiful message from a good friend of mine, which ties into the next segment here. I'm about to share a quote from Carl Jung and pose the question: if you know in your heart, in your soul, in your bones, what you're supposed to do and what feels right, if you know what lights you up and how you can help the world, why aren't you doing it? And can you escape it? Check it out. This is a story about doing that thing in your soul that you know you're called to do. There's a quote by Carl Jung. He says, "You meet your destiny on the road you take to avoid it." And the first time I heard that, I paused. Not because it was poetic, but because just like when anything meaningful hits you, it feels personal, like it was written for me, describing chapters of my life that I hadn't quite closed. Here's a little pretext, about the way I once looked at the world. I used to think life could be outmaneuvered, that if I planned enough or calculated enough, if I stayed sharp enough, I could avoid the chaos, I could dodge pain. If I planned just right, I'd be able to skip all the hard parts. I used to think discipline and direction meant full control. But in so many contexts, they just bring about delay. Because what I feared never seemed to vanish when I ran from it. It would simply wait. It would follow. And eventually it would reintroduce itself. Not necessarily as a punishment, but as a mirror of sorts, calling for reflection. And here's the thing, we don't get to negotiate with the path. We either walk it or get dragged through it, because it always finds us. That's what destiny does. Now, don't mistake that for powerlessness. This doesn't imply that you don't have a say. In fact, you have more control than you can even imagine. The question is not whether the road exists. It does. The choice is in how you choose to meet it. You can lean in with open eyes and steady feet, or you can resist, delay, deny, until life in its relentless wisdom brings you back around. One path is painful, the other still hard, but builds you, right? One is friction, the other is fire, transforming you into something more. Destiny doesn't punish you, it just refuses to let you stay small. There's a story within a story here. When I was in the corporate world, I talk about the value that I got from that time in my life. I was fresh out of college, full of ambition. I was obsessed with the next title. I thought that success was about rising fast, about being seen, the role, the status, the corner office. Right? And there was, at the time, a VP that I worked under, and she used to tell me, Eddie, I see you being exceptional in learning and development. You have a gift for, helping people understand, see value, helping them grow. And at the time, I just did not want to hear it. I was so reluctant to agree, dismissed it. Not because I didn't respect her, she was a superstar of a human being, but because I had tunnel vision. Learning and development, that sounded soft, it sounded slow. I wanted to manage, to lead, right? To move widgets and metrics and, oversee a region of the country. Who cares about personal growth? Which, fate got the last laugh there. I ran, at least to the extent that I could, eventually left the industry. And wouldn't you know it, right? Years later, building my own brand, right? Leading a team of amazing people who, we all have the same mission of helping people grow and, make the most of their lives. It's not kind of what she suggested my skill set and value add was. It's exactly that. And I knew it because it felt good when I did it. I enjoyed it. But the ego said, no, you need to be managing the Northwest division, whatever it was. Managing operations. It's not where I was meant to be, right? I was meant to help people grow and teach and build and inspire. I didn't choose that path back then, but it chose me, and maybe it chose me before birth, right? Eventually, I found the courage to circle back to it. Just like Jung said, I met my destiny on the road I took to avoid it. That resistance, that detour, well, as you can imagine, it wasn't just my story, it's everyone's story. There's a pattern in every great myth, every story of transformation. It's called the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell mapped it out. And the hero begins in a very ordinary world, safe, predictable, familiar. He's incentivized by the things that most people in his world are incentivized by. His limitations are certainly worldly. Then comes the call to adventure, a challenge, a whisper, a truth that you can't ignore. But what happens next? Well, almost every time the hero refuses the call. For those Star Wars fans out there, Luke Skywalker, he didn't want to leave home, right? As a farmer on Tatooine. He wasn't ready to face the evil empire. He doubted himself. He resisted. He wanted more of what he knew. And the story of Jonah is similar. Someone mentioned this to me the other day. I don't know how many times Luke Skywalker and the story of Jonah are used in the same example, but first for everything. God asks him to go to Nineveh to speak, to change hearts. He says no. He gets in a ship and he goes in the other direction. But fate didn't take kindly to shortcuts. A storm came. The ship shook, and Jonah, amidst all this, was thrown overboard. He was swallowed whole by a great fish, alone in darkness, nowhere left to run. And that's where he met his truth. That's where he surrendered to his life's purpose, his mission. That's where the journey for him truly began. See, destiny does not ask us if we're ready. It simply arrives. And when we resist, we often find ourselves in the belly of our own fear, until we realize the only way out, as Robert Frost suggests, is through. Jonah eventually got it. Luke Skywalker eventually got it. And eventually, so do we. Because the refusal doesn't stop the story. It merely delays a transformation, your transformation. And the Stoics, they knew this as well. They spoke on it, wrote about it all the time. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Seneca said, fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant. More or less, for the sake of our conversation, meaning you can run, you can hide behind logic, busyness, perfectionism. But destiny is not looking for your comfort. It's waiting for your commitment to step into that purpose, into that person you've known your whole life has been there waiting to be unveiled to the world. I look back now and laugh at how hard I tried to outpace my own purpose. But I needed to learn that avoidance, it doesn't keep you safe, it keeps you small. It keeps you playing in someone else's game, a spectator in someone else's arena, instead of thriving and becoming a superstar in your own, adding more value to the world and those around you than you can imagine. Your destiny, it's a lot of things, but it's never small. So I ask you, what have you been avoiding? What's the path that quietly calls your name? The one that feels right, but maybe demands of you a little more right now than you're willing to give. One that you say maybe later to every time the thought arises. Because it's waiting. And maybe it's not supposed to be easy. Maybe you're never going to feel ready. Maybe that discomfort is the signal, not a stop sign, but a sign to go. And embracing that is how you win. It's how you find peace. Not by dodging the road, but trusting it. Because when you finally step into that discomfort, when you answer the call you've been avoiding, you don't just find your destiny. You become it. There you have it. Perhaps the most important gift we can give ourselves is doing that which we are called to do. Which begs the question, why don't we? Right? And this next segment looks to address that. If we know where we should be going, if we know where our heart, our soul, we know in our bones what's pulling us, why don't we go there? Seems easy, right? But I think it's simple, not easy, right? Simple in theory, but in execution, anything but easy, because the mind wants to protect the status quo. The mind associates falling and, temporary loss with something that is ultimately negative, when in reality, the only way to unlock a world that matters most is diving right into those things. It's being proud to try things and fail, depersonalizing outcome, understanding it's part of the process, understanding not everyone will get it, right? So This next segment is a call to fall. I hope you find the courage to make mistakes. To fall on your face. To break things and put them back together. I hope you find the strength to move forward without knowing. A feat that is simultaneously one of the most challenging things to do in life, but also one of the most rewarding. It's perhaps my greatest adversary, reinvention. Knowing that, your time has run its course. Understanding that it's time to break and build again. But being so deeply terrified to let go. What if things don't work out? What if I lose? What if I'm worse off than I was right now because of my ambition, my self-belief, my hope for a tomorrow better than today? What if it all goes down in flames? Someone once said to me that one of our biggest misunderstandings or misconceptions is that what we've done in the past holds all our value. We can't walk away from what we've made. It's who we are. The mind says it's tied to our identity. When, truth be told, what we've done in the past is meaningless. It's symbolic. It's a mirage. It's not tied to potential or upside or what's next. Your value is not in what you've made. It's in your ability to build again. What truly shines is the warrior you've been cultivating day by day, lesson by lesson, the one who stares back at you when you look in the mirror. In fact, you eventually come to learn that what you've built, believe it or not, is an ankle weight, a false sense of security keeping you from living life. Because life is meant to be messy. Oh, it's meant to be explored. We're not made of glass, because unlike glass, we are supposed to fall apart. Unlike glass, our greatness is not transparent. It's a culmination of courageous decisions and educated risk. It's the result of knowing that things might not work out. But those odds are better than definitely won't work out. Which, by the way, is what happens if you stay where you are. If you want to stand there and defend the status quo, if you want to lay down and die on the hill of mediocrity, do it. No one's stopping you. But you'll have to be okay knowing you took your winning lottery ticket, placed it in a drawer on your desk, and you never cashed it in. That's the thing about potential. It can mean everything, and it can mean nothing. There's an old idea that people will always choose the devil they know over the one they don't. Because the devil they know, aside from being familiar, is private. It's a silent pain. The devil you know is, I could have, but I didn't. The devil you don't know, on the other hand, it's a totally different ballgame. That can be a public extravaganza. That could be a ship sinking in broad daylight. If you try, and you fail, you may fail spectacularly. And by the way, to the pure joy of onlookers and your critics, what a special little hell that would be. But what if that special little hell was the door you had to walk through? And look, in so many ways, I'm a pragmatist. I'm not suggesting you give yourself a little pep talk in the mirror and then go solo climb El Capitan. But what if you understood the game? What if it clicked? And you realized that protecting the past meant a fraction of what it means to find the courage to fail. Daily, micro failures, small lessons. What if you started to build an immunity to hitting the ground? What if you realize that people are gonna say good things and bad things about you, and they'll do both whether you try or not, whether you extend yourself or not, whether you shoot or not, and there's pain, there's pain whether you go or stay. So you might as well feel the pain of progress. There's risk associated with being here and leaving for there, but leaving has an exponentially greater upside, and so why not go? Why not find within you the courage to fail, to depersonalize scraped knees and a bruised ego? Because reinvention requires leaving the good in pursuit of the great, and you are worthy of greatness. You are worthy of more. Yeah, for you. But lift your head up. Because it's also for those who mean the most to you. It's for the souls you will inspire along the way. And I know how daunting the task feels. Not only the unknown circumstance waiting outside, but the possibility of losing what you have now. I swear to you, I resonate with that more deeply than you could imagine. But it's time. Right now, it's time to go. It's time to take some L's so that you can use them as stepping stones. And man, I hope you find the courage to make mistakes. To fall on your face, to break things and build them again. I hope you find the strength to move forward without knowing, a feat that is simultaneously one of the most difficult things to do in life and most rewarding. Because in a life that is finite, one comprised of setting suns and ticking clocks, I promise you, you have much more to gain than lose. I hope you find the courage to fall. This week, let's be a little bit bolder in our pursuits. Which brings me to the last segment here. What does it mean to not act? Well, the last segment here is a reminder that when you don't act, it is a decision, right? We tend to think of a decision as being proactive, as stepping out, as trying something new. But what if every day that you did nothing, every day you didn't change, every day you stayed the same, what if you saw that as a decision, as a choice? As a deliberate, no thank you, I'm not leveling up today. No thank you, my dreams are not important. No thank you, this isn't great, but it'll do. It reframes the scenario. To not change is a choice. And this next segment explains exactly why. What you're not changing, you are choosing. In other words, nothing happening, or quote unquote, the same, is a decision. We just don't think of it that way. And this is an idea that was shared with me under one of my recent YouTube videos. by username Night Owl. So, dude, love the name and appreciate the sharing of the quote here. And I think it's incredibly pertinent. I talk a lot about the finitude of life, how time is our most precious commodity because each second that ticks off the clock is the only thing you can't get back, right? You can always reacquire money and these tangible things. Time is once that elapses, it's forever gone. So it makes sense that we ask, well, how do we maximize it? How do we make the most of it? And I wonder this, I want to pose a question. When was the last time you were disappointed with your day? Not because you did something, but because it was underwhelming, because it felt like that sort of cyclical 24 hours. You didn't make any steps towards your goals. You didn't feel like you made progress. It was just more of the mundane. And you thought to yourself, I allowed this. When was the last time you were somewhere you didn't want to be, or around people who didn't light you up, didn't energize you? They're not conducive to your well-being. And you thought, I chose this. A lot of times we just assume we have to do these things because it's life and it's outside of our control. The vast majority of the time, that's simply not the case. And when we take extreme ownership of everything, when we realize that anything happening in the status quo is because we are green-lighting it, we're allowing it to take place, that empowers us. Right? If you think of your life as an arena, it takes you from the stands as an observer. Oh, look, here are things happening to me in my life, and puts you on the floor, on the court, on the stage, however you want to think about it in your brain. It gives you the ability to change outcomes. And that's what we all have. We all have that power. We just have to get past this notion that things are the way they are. It's like, no, if you don't like what's around you, if you're looking to your left and your right and you're disappointed, or it's not enough, or it's not aligned with you, guess whose fault that is? Yours. And guess why that's beautiful? Now you can change it. I want to share a story. This is something I recently came across, a TikTok video. And before I kind of dig into it a little bit, I'm just going to say I actually really like the creator. I think he's a funny dude, entertains his audience, seems like a good guy, all that stuff. But the one thing that he does from time to time that drives me crazy is bitch about how hard things are for millennials. Homes are so expensive. Jobs simply don't pay enough. It's way too difficult to meet people. Boomers had it so much easier. It's like the same song and dance. And he gets thousands and thousands of people to join him in what I think is best described as a community temper tantrum, right? Everyone kind of claps along like baby seals, talking about how hard life is. And it's like, look, two things can be true at once, and often are. Statistically, he is not wrong, okay? It's way harder to own a house now than it was 60 years ago. Both statistical and anecdotal evidence is gonna support this. But I can't help but ask, what are you getting from whining? How is anything better? Anything, name one thing that improves, right? If anything, you're taking steps backwards because you're creating this narrative in your brain that life is working against you, that everything is an uphill battle. And there's nothing so dangerous as a poor me mindset. And so that got me wondering, how different would my life be if 7 years ago, when I was broke, writing speeches in my boxers, practicing speaking, to the wall, if I spent time every day convincing myself that I was sentenced to a life of misery because I'm not a boomer, right? Imagine if I spent more time whining than building, or looking for reasons that life is stacked against me. Like, everything would just be exponentially different. And as I'm speaking this, I get it. I'm 37. I'm kind of the old man wagging his finger at people on TikTok already, I guess. But I just feel compelled to do it because I've walked through a little bit of fire. And I can tell you that if I allowed that thought pattern to consume me, I would be way worse off than I am now, right? I'm saying this out of love, believe it or not, out of concern. When the currency shifted on these social platforms to victimhood, when the incentive became garnering the most sympathy under one's videos, people started gravitating away from their power in order to be patted on the head and told, it's not their fault. Another quick anecdote. A few years back, I think I've talked about this before, I did a run across Texas with some friends. It was like 500 miles all in all, the route we went. And along the way, as happens when you're running for an extended period of time, started getting these little issues, right? The usual bumps and bruises you imagine during a run like that. And we paused and we were grabbing some water, taking a little breather. And I start talking about my knee and how it's killing me. And my friend Tom, who, one of my best friends, he's a little bit older and sometimes, doesn't shy away from some tough love. He goes, Ed, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what you're gonna get from telling me. He's messing with me a little bit, but there is truth to that, right? Like, what could I have possibly gotten from that exchange other than sympathy? And what's sympathy worth? I think nothing. Like, there was a little moment that ended up being not so little. I've learned to become my own biggest fan. That's not always the easiest thing to do, right? Amidst the trials and tribulations of life. Right? I'm there for myself. I give myself grace, right? But sometimes what I need is tough love with the knee scenario. Same thing with the millennials whining about, I guess, life in totality on TikTok, with anyone talking about anything they aren't happy with in their lives. And I think the real value is in this phrase. Do something to change it, or shut up. If you're not content with the status quo, be the change, or stop talking about it. Sympathy has never been a valuable thing in my life, right? Pity from others has never helped me. And even though seeking it may feel good in the moment, it's like this distraction from the introspection that needs to occur, it's still ultimately a mirage. It's a trick, a trap. You don't want it, as pretty as it may seem in the moment. If you don't like something, fix it. Because you can. Start working towards a solution. Because you're powerful enough to do that. Always. And so when you've noticed time go by and there's that reoccurrence of that which is, again, not conducive to your happiness or well-being, when you feel that temptation to seek validation and pity for your experience, please let this be a reminder. Your strength is not in garnering sympathy, it's in fixing it. It's in changing your life. It's in pivoting and adjusting. You are a fixer, a doer. You are a maker of worlds. Not someone who bows their head and concedes to their current reality. And so, I'll end again with a little refresher on my pal Night Owl's quote. What you are not changing, you are choosing. You are choosing it when you're upset. You're choosing it when you vent and complain. You're choosing it when you throw your arms in the air and proclaim it's all out of your hands. It's all a choice. And the good news, the message, the takeaway, the saving grace is you were given the power to script your own narrative and write your own story. Don't waste that. Don't let that slip away. Choose not to accept the now, but rather to create the ideal. Well, that concludes the show. Thank you for sticking around. And let me know. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. One decision, one courageous act, one step you are taking this week to move you towards an ideal state, that evolved self. If you enjoyed this, make sure you like, subscribe, plenty more to come, and I will see you in a few days.